set auto-destruct sequence.
It's the time allotted that concerns me.
Recognize Picard, Jean-Luc, Captain. Recognize Riker, William T, Commander.
Maximum warp!
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Warp Core Podcast. It is I, Urza Master. Joining me, as always, Lord Uther and Fert Derby from the limitless void of the Q Continuum. Gentlemen, welcome. Welcome back. We are in episode 102. We are just a couple episodes shy of that century mark. If you haven't seen our episode on The Big Goodbye, I highly recommend you go back to our archives, check that out. It was a great episode. 100 episodes of the Warp Core Podcast, huge milestone. If you're not a subscriber yet, make sure you click that subscribe button, hit that notification icon, stay up to date with us, drop us a comment, let us know what's your favorite Star Trek Next Generation episode or Star Trek episode in general. Today we are talking Angel 1, and for the record books, I think this may be the first instance of Commander William Riker pulling a Kirk. Gentlemen, I turn it over to Fert Derby out there in the Q Continuum for the Q's views on Angel 1.
Thank you, Urza Master. Thank you, Lord Uther. Thank you, loyal Warp Core enthusiasts. Yes, this is Angel 1, first aired on January 25th, 1988. Again, I was just a mere lad of 15, and I had the world all figured out, as you do normally at that age. This was directed by Michael Rhodes. It was written by Patrick Berry, and I'm not so sure we'll be seeing those names consistently across the galaxy going forward, and perhaps this episode is one of those reasons why. Angel 1 was intended, and that word is doing a lot of heavy lifting, it was intended as a commentary on apartheid in South Africa. Now, that only seems funny until you watch the episode. Basically, it was a planet where men and women had different social statuses and political hierarchies. And for the purposes of this tortured analogy, the men on the planet were supposed to represent people of Africa, the native population, and the women were supposed to be the oppressors. And again, Lethal Weapon 2 covered this a year later, far more respectfully, dare I say it, and coherently. If you're familiar with that Mel Gibson, Danny Glover, Joe Pesci sequel.
Diplomatic immunity.
Exactly. So maybe they were just workshopping here before they got to the meat and potatoes. But in any event, however you feel about its political leanings, what we got was Angel 1. This also has the first mention of Romulans in the new series after Gene Roddenberry initially laid down the edict. No Vulcans, no Klingons, no Romulans, no service. Gates McFadden is on the record as saying that this is one of the most sexist episodes that we ever had. And showrunner Maurice Hurley, his quote that you can find online is brief and to the point, and I quote, "Terrible, just terrible." Truthfully, gentlemen, evolution versus revolution is the theme of the game, but it feels like it's been packaged circa a Gil Gerard Buck Rogers from 1979. Not the least of which we get a very hirsute Riker, as we just referenced, as well as a shirtless Picard, who's come down with ailments and so forth. He does get hit by a snowball. I did think that was a nice moment of levity there, because again, we're just learning about the holodeck, following the big goodbye and so forth. So it was nice to see that the cadets and we're all on a ski vacation. We used to have those when we were growing up. We used to go up to Wisconsin and do a little skiing. So that was very cool. Again, the trope that was established in the original series of there's a mysterious virus and it's struck the crew and it's moving like wildfire. But we did get Geordi to take the chair in this one, so that was very cool. And you had this, this women-dominated authority trying to stamp out rebellion and resistance. And the twist being that the rebellion, once the Star Trek crew comes to aid them, says, "Hey, we don't want to go anywhere. This is home. We have no intention of leaving." So, gentlemen, like I say, I feel like this probably sounded okay in the writer's room, but when it came time to actually making it to our syndicated television screens, maybe something was lost in the translation. You guys tell me how you felt about Angel One.
Well, it just hit me now that snowball shouldn't have worked, right? Is it?
Right.
We
The
just
laws
summed
of
that up in the big goodbye.
I don't know why I just realized that, but that snowball should have never hit him. So this episode should have never occurred. The idea that we got two shirtless, like Patrick Stewart, and we got these two guys with their shirts off, which I just thought was it a callback for the writers that they wanted to do something like that? I just thought it was kind of awkward to make that decision at that point, especially when I feel like they had been leaning, on Will Riker to kind of be that Kirk-esque type of ladies' man, and then we've got Picard with no shirt on. I did like him playing up being sick. I don't know why. I found that part kind of interesting, that he's restricted to his quarters and, he wants to keep running the ship, but he obviously, he can't in a sense. And I do like the mystery virus that kind of happens out of nowhere. The stuff on the planet, quite honestly, did not interest me that much. It
Engage you?
took away from the episode. What was that?
Engage you?
Yeah, right, yes. Hello. It just did not,
Engage.
yeah, that did not work for me for some reason. Though, of course, again, they kind of use Data as the everyman solution out. He's able to beam up because he's not affected by the virus. And, it all works out in the long run like it always does in Star Trek. So, to me, okay episode. Could have been done differently probably and had a much better effect. But let's see what Urza thinks about all these shirtless commanders walking around the Enterprise.
It's funny. I feel like we have two episodes here. It's more like Angel 2. You have the ship crisis going on, which would have been a fine episode in and of itself. Let's add a little explanation somehow to why a snowball came out of the holodeck successfully, which I think you could do. I mean, there's all sorts of holodeck episodes where there's a power surge or a product or some sort of a malfunction. I think you could make that work, and it would have been a fine crisis aboard the ship in a bottle episode. With Dr. Crusher and Geordi having to take command, and there could have been some encounter at the neutral zone or something, which would have been great. Like there's a ship-to-ship crisis, and they're supposed to deliver somebody or something, and now they can't raise contact, and nobody can beam over because of the virus. Like that's a great episode. I'd love that. You also have the apartheid-esque, which I don't think was a successful addressing of apartheid. Obviously, I picked up on it, but it's like, everybody here is white. Like, I think you could have been a little bit more clear on what you were talking about, and they should have been, because that would have been a great political Star Trek take, as most Star Trek episodes often are. I didn't mind the on-planet stuff. I just felt like it was kind of rushed and not very well thought out. I think the whole love interest with Riker and the leader, the female society, it's really cool. I think they kind of made the females kind of weak, which is why I'd agree this is a fairly sexist episode. Because I think at the end of the day, it kind of boils down to like men still have background control. There's the whole apartheid thing kind of fails because, the powers that be are still the traditional powers that be, rightly or wrongly traditional, I should say. Riker has to kind of step in and essentially save the day. And yeah, Data being the everyman solution, like it feels a little cheap. It's not as creative as I'd expect out of a Star Trek episode. But again, I think that's a product more of they're trying to cram two independently good episodes together. I think together they don't really work. But you could make this a planetary episode, and similar to what we see at the end of the original series, where they have just a couple of scenes from the ship, basically watching the show on TV. You know, you could have done something like that here, like maybe Riker's undercover, trying to understand a society. Like, you know, they do this a few times. I mean, they did it in Insurrection, right? They're trying to monitor this developing society. There's a ship crash. You know, there's people there from the Federation. They're trying to figure out where they are, so they're going undercover. Like, that's a great episode. That could be really good. And then, you know, Riker laying the pipe is just, you know, that's just TNG in a nutshell. Like, you could still have the whole love story thing and have it be successful. Have Deanna Troi be somewhat jealous. You know, maybe do this after Tasha Yar. This could be after Yar, AY. Because I don't think she adds anything to this episode. She's just sort of there and complicates the show. But I think you could probably pull it off with just Data and Troy and Riker on the planet. And I think it would have been a perfectly good 3-man away team episode. But when you smash these two together, you know, I understand they're trying to raise the stakes, because the stakes on the planet aren't terribly high, right? Where's the prime directive in all of this? That's the other thing that kind of bothers me, is like, aren't they not supposed to, you know, interfere? And I know they're kind of trying not to, but they end up doing it anyway. Like, it's not well executed. I don't know that this is the worst TNG episode I've ever seen, but it's definitely not as successful as it would have been if you had two different parts. You could even have this episode be a two-parter and have the ship problem and the planet problem and really build those for an episode independently and then resolve them in a second episode. I think that would have made it better. They just didn't have enough time to develop either story. And they sort of scrambled through. But Patrick Stewart, of course, is like the unsung hero of this episode, because he plays this up really well. I mean, it's comic, but it's also dramatic. I mean, he's just the acting skills really shined here for me.
I think when we talk about the best of the Next Generation and the Bermanverse, we talk about how the show took the original ideals of Star Trek and then crafted, at the time, modern storytelling techniques, serialized storytelling, a deeper inflection of character and backstory and themes and all of those things. I mean, when it gets cooking in later seasons and later shows, it's arguably stands head and shoulders with any of, you know, the golden age of television that we've been experiencing now. But what I think this episode kind of suffers from, as several of the first season episodes critics and fans have agreed, is it too much kind of wants to play in that original series, again, late 70s science fiction kind of playground. And it just never, for this viewer, it feels like more of, let's try to do something that could have worked, you know, way back in the late 60s with Shatner and Nimoy and so forth, that type of an episode. And so I don't think it really neatly fits the paradigm that we will come to expect, demand, and enjoy in subsequent seasons, and like I say, Deep Space Nine and Voyager and so forth. I mean, they all have their clunkers, and I mean, this one doesn't go so far off the rail that you're like, my God, what were they thinking? But it just doesn't. It doesn't quite have the sizzle that you'll see there. It was them working through, you know, like you say, sort of some compounding narratives. And it makes for serviceable television, but it's not appointment TV.
You know what kind of hit me is that when we had 20 plus episodes a season, you could have a stinker or two and get beyond it, like push past it, right? Because there's going to be episodes that outshine it. Nowadays, you can't, because and I know we went back and viewed Book of Boba Fett again, but let's just go off of at least my first impressions from that. It lost me. Like, if we weren't doing this podcast, I would have probably never gone back and watched that again, because there were a couple of episodes, at least for me, that like were kind of stinkers and made the whole thing fall apart. And look at how quickly these things get canceled now, or they don't get renewed, right? Because if you have a couple of episodes that stink, you're in trouble. So it's like this fine line, because I want 20 episodes of Strange New Worlds. I would love that. But would that cause some lackluster performance if we, would you have some of those stinker episodes where we're getting these bangers like every single episode for Strange New Worlds, but it just a couple of stinkers, it can ruin a series now and shut it down.
Yeah, it's tough to overcome. Like, you see it with some really good shows too. I look at like Rings of Power, where that's an excellent show, but there's one episode or two where folks were like, that wasn't as good, and you lose people en masse, which is unfair. And I think I go back to you need to produce a series for broadcast free TV. Make it built for commercials. Make it a 52 episode or 26 episode season, whatever. I know that the money often doesn't go for that kind of thing, but you produce things out of that end up being so much more impactful. Because we think about this as like Angel One is probably going to be lower on our Warp Core ratings. Let's just be honest. We'll get to those in a second. But there are probably people out there that look at this episode and go, actually, I really like this one. This one's one of my favorites. And there's several of those. I mean, I'm sure somebody out there loved Cat's Paw. I'm sure somebody did.
Killed him.
Killed him. And burn the witch. But it's true. I mean, there's something for everyone, and there's always those seeds that you can seize upon later. And we see that with Strange New Worlds, where they're picking up little details from original series, TNG, the Berman verse at large. We saw it with Picard, where there's little tiny nuggets of information that become relevant and creates this sort of like meta storytelling that I think make it that much more impactful today. And that's something that I think is lost. I mean, as much as I love an 8-episode constant fantastic storyline like Andor season 2, I gotta say I kind of miss being on the edge of my seat every week. Like, is this going to be another great episode? Is this one going to be a filler? I think of all my favorite shows that I would list in, let's just say, my top 5, to be honest with you, they're all broadcast TV. They're all 26 to 42-minute episodes of shows that ran for huge seasons, and those huge seasons didn't always have perfect episodes. And they had things like Monster of the Week episodes on the X-Files or Supernatural. They had filler episodes like, frankly, Star Trek Next Generation is mostly filler. I mean, it's a lot of character development, and then you get your canon episodes, kind of like in the X-Files, where you can watch the first episode of the season, a mid-season episode, and then the finale, and that's the story of the X-Files. Everything else is hunting a chupacabra. So, that being said,
it's funny, real quick, the things that we praise on, let's take Strange New Worlds as our example. The money is the issue, but not in the way that we would normally associate it with. They're spending, I don't know, $5 million an episode or some, with the visual effects that are state of the art and all of this. If you took that money that Paramount sets aside for a season of Strange New Worlds, and you cut back on some of these fantastic effects and sets and everything like that, then yeah, you could easily do another 5, 6, 10 episodes a season. But that's the price that we're end up paying. They're spending a large amount of money to give us this first-rate product, and that's why we're only getting, 10 a season, 8 a season. You know, there are some Marvel shows now, there are only going to be 6 episodes. I think the upcoming Vision miniseries that Terry Matalas is going to be show running. He was instrumental in season 3 of Picard. So now he's jumped to the Marvel universe. So it's like we praise them for this could be up on the big screen and it looks fantastic, but that's why we're only getting 6 or 7 of these things, because they're like, I'm not paying Andor money. Let's not forget, apparently Andor's 2 seasons, which we only got, I think we got around 20, maybe 22 episodes out of 2 seasons. They're saying it was about 650 million invested overall, you know, casting, sets, effects, the whole thing. They had the COVID delays or the strikes. I mean, no feature film, not even a James Cameron, has ever spent $650 million on a project. I think Hollywood on the big screen, I think the record is somewhere in the 300s at best, and that's like only 1 or 2 films. I think one of the Pirates of the Caribbean went off the rails and was like 320, 350 million. But yeah, I mean, again, I say spend away. I don't hold back. Don't pinch pennies. But I think that's why we're only seeing these micro bursts. And like Uther and Urza Master say, pick your favorite shows of the last 10 years. Boardwalk Empire, Game of Thrones. I mean, you will inevitably find something that doesn't quite, hit your personal satisfaction bar. And I think, to be fair, that I don't think you should flee en masse just when, something doesn't quite sit with you. A plot point, a character who suddenly turns evil after being who you're rooting for 6 seasons. I mean, you all find your own personal Rubicon to cross. But, I mean, for me, I love that world of Westeros, and so forth. And so I guess I'm more forgiving. I love the Star Wars universe, the galaxy far, far away. I can forgive it the occasional slight or misstep, because I just love the storytelling and I love being in that world. And I think if people, like you say, they watch the first episode, oh, that was trash or whatever, and then suddenly, you're fighting to stay alive. It's a new environment.
You are very forgiving, Phantom Menace person.
Yes, I am. Indeed.
Yep. No, absolutely. I think that's a good point. And I'm not complaining, obviously. I think we're getting some amazing cinematic television. I just wish, pare back the budget, produce a longer show. You can get a lot done over 26 episodes. And frankly, TV shows, other than sitcoms, which nothing wrong with those either, but TV shows just don't do that anymore. And that's kind of been, I think, a big missing link in broadcast TV. And I think why a lot of free TV is just reruns, and it has been for a long time, is that you don't get big hit shows like this. I mean, what do you got? Law and Order, all 15, 16 of them now? Like, wow. It's always the same episode.
Dr. Odyssey.
And I think, yeah, it's just, not that Star Trek isn't always a little bit of the same episode. I mean, let's be real, but no, I think it's a good point. I love the idea of spending the money, getting something like 6 mini movies out of a TV show. Never going to complain. I just would love to see Star Trek do this, because I think they can do a lot more with, frankly, a lot less. I mean, these sets weren't that elaborate. TNG. I mean, they got a little bit more elaborate as time goes by, but you can do a lot with Ship in the Bottle. You can do a lot of sight, shots. That you could go back to what was it, Laurel Canyon or Red Rocks?
Vasquez Rocks, yeah.
Yes, Vasquez Rocks. Thank you. What, Red Rocks? Star Trek in concert, I guess.
John Tesh.
But I think it's something they got to start considering, because this big money dollars that, frankly, streams, I don't know how it's monetized exactly, but I got to think it's not as lucrative as having a TV series where you get toys, you get kids that watch. You can make it family friendly and still be entertaining. So, that being said, all of that laid out, as we've kind of defended Angel One not being the best episode in the world, I will kick off our Warp Core ratings this week. I'm going to give this episode a solid 3. I know that's fairly low, but again, I feel like this is 2 episodes tangled into one that neither work together. Separate this into 2. I think we could have 2 solid 5s, but because they kind of step on each other too much, it's a 3 for me.
I'll be just a little more generous and go 3.5, because anytime Picard gets mad at Wesley, I'm in. So, and I get to see Picard and Riker without their shirts. And Picard has no hair on his chest. Like, what's happening here?
Smooth as a baby's bottom.
Yes. Good reference. All right, Fert.
You know what? I'm just a weak-willed softie. My initial note, I always jot down my numbers as I'm watching these. I had it at a gentleman's 4. I mean, there are things to like as a Star Trek fan. Again, this isn't Cat's Paw or that other one that Lord Uther continually references from season 1. The God, what was the name of that one there? The Apple
Alternative factor.
Alternative factor.
I mean, it certainly didn't strike me as that. But again, it like he said at the top, it did not really engage, and I think they probably could have cleaned that one up. Like I said, these contributors, the director, the writer, they are not Star Trek staples. They did not helm or write multiple episodes, so I think they just kind of came in. They shot their 42 minutes for the week, and then the show kind of said, "Yep, thank you, and we'll see you at the convention." And that was pretty much how they went.
Sometimes that's good enough. And I think I'll just leave it at that. Angel One, there's not a whole lot more to say, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. It was okay. It just wasn't bad. But to those of you out there at Starfleet Academy and at home, we, the Warp Core Podcast, encourage you to let us know what you think in the comments below. How did you think Angel One fared? Was it better than we said? Worse than we said? Could it be 2 episodes? Or is there a hidden 3rd episode that maybe Data could have starred in? You let us know. Make sure to subscribe and share. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this. We are bringing you all of Star Trek. That is our goal here at the Warp Core Podcast. And if you aren't familiar with us, but would like to be, we have over 100 episodes now. Jump into that archive. Check out everything from our coverage of Star Trek the Motion Picture through the entire Picard series, the entire original series, all the movies, and then catch up with us as we get back to you next week on episode 103 from the Warp Core Podcast. You make it so.